Admiral Kethvar stood in the command center of the space station called Harmony's Edge. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. Around him, dozens of alien beings from different worlds worked at glowing control panels. Their faces all showed the same thing: fear. The giant viewing screen in front of them displayed a terrible sight. Dark shapes moved through space like a black cloud. These were the Void Swarm, and they were eating everything in their path. "Sir, we just lost contact with the Centauri colonies," reported Lieutenant Zara, a tall being with 4 arms and silver eyes. Her voice shook as she spoke. "The swarm consumed them completely. 4 billion people gone in 6 hours." Kethvar closed his eyes. 4 billion lives. That was more than the population of his homeworld. The Void Swarm had been moving through the galaxy for 3 years now. Every time they attacked, they won. Every time the Coalition tried to fight back, they failed. The Coalition of Peaceful Worlds was the largest government in the galaxy. It included over 200 different alien species. Some looked like tall, thin people with pointed ears. Others were made of living rock. Some lived underwater and needed special suits to breathe air. But they all had one thing in common: they had lived in peace for thousands of years. "How long until they reach the Vega system?" Kethvar asked. "At their current speed, maybe 2 weeks," answered Commander Velnix, a being whose body looked like flowing water held in a clear container. "The defense fleet there has 40,000 ships. But after what happened at Proxima," Velnix did not need to finish. Everyone knew what happened at Proxima. The Coalition had sent 60,000 ships to stop the swarm there. Only 300 ships had escaped. The rest were destroyed or worse, turned into more swarm creatures. Dr. Lisithera walked up to the group. She was one of the ethereal Harmony, a species that looked like living crystal. Light danced through her clear body as she moved. She was the Coalition's best scientist, and she looked more worried than anyone. "Admiral, I've studied every battle we have fought against the swarm," she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Our energy weapons do nothing to them. Their ships can change and adapt to any energy attack within minutes. Plasma cannons, laser arrays, ion beams, nothing works after the first few shots." "What about the quantum torpedoes?" asked Kethvar. "They worked at the Battle of Alpha Station." "For exactly 12 minutes, Lisithera replied. "Then the swarm adapted to those too. Sir, I do not think we can win this war with our current weapons." The command center fell silent. Outside the windows, they could see the Coalition fleet. Thousands of beautiful ships with smooth curves and glowing hulls. These ships had kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. But they were not made for war like this. Captain Moradin spoke up from his station. He was from a species that looked like giant plants with many arms instead of branches. "What about asking the warrior clans of Andromeda for help?" "They are too far away," Kethvar said. "By the time their fleets could reach us, the swarm will have consumed half the galaxy." "The Timekeepers of Dimension 7? "They do not interfere in physical conflicts. One by one, they went through every possible ally. The result was always the same. No one could help them in time. No one had weapons that could stop the swarm." Dr. Lisithera suddenly stopped moving. Her crystal body began to glow brighter. "Wait," she said. "There might be one option, but it is dangerous." "More dangerous than letting the swarm eat the entire galaxy?" Kethvar asked. "Perhaps." Lisithera moved to a computer terminal. Her crystal fingers danced over the controls. "I am accessing the deep archives, the oldest records in Coalition space." The main screen changed to show old, faded text. The words were in the ancient language that all Coalition species had learned to read. "What does it say?" asked Velnix. "It is a report from the First Contact Division dated over 200 standard years ago," Lisithera said. "They found a world on the edge of the galaxy. A world they called Earth." "Never heard of it," said Captain Moradin. "You would not have. It was classified as a Class X death world and placed under permanent quarantine." Everyone in the command center stopped what they were doing. A Class X death world was the highest danger rating possible. It meant a planet so dangerous that even visiting it could kill you. "What made it so dangerous?" Kethvar asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. Lisithera read from the old files. "Gravity 3 times galactic standard. Atmosphere composition toxic to most known life. Weather patterns that include violent storms spanning entire continents. Volcanic activity that can change the climate. And worst of all," she paused. "Worst of all what?" demanded Kethvar. the dominant species. They called themselves humans. The report says they are persistence hunters who evolved from predators. They fight wars against their own kind for sport. They have developed thousands of different ways to kill other living things. The contact team was so frightened that they recommended the entire species be left alone. You want us to ask these humans for help? Velnik sounded shocked. These creatures from a death world? Think about it, Lysathara said. The swarm can adapt to any energy weapon we use. But what if someone fought them with something different? What if someone used weapons the swarm had never seen before? Admiral Kethavar stared at the screen. The idea was insane, but they were already facing the end of everything. What did they have to lose? Do we even know if they are still alive? He asked. This report is 200 years old. Unknown, Lysathara replied. But there is only one way to find out. Around the command center, aliens from dozens of different worlds looked at each other. They were peaceful beings who had lived their entire lives without violence. The idea of asking predators from a death world for help went against everything they believed in. But outside the windows, space was empty where the Centauri colonies used to be. Send the message, Kethavar said finally. Contact this Earth, tell them what is happening. Ask them, he stopped. What exactly were they asking for? Tell them the galaxy is dying, he said. Tell them we need warriors. Tell them we need killers. The words felt strange in his mouth. In all his years of service, he had never said anything like that before. Dr. Lysathara began working on the transmission. She included all their information about the swarm, their location, and a desperate plea for help. When she was finished, she looked up at the Admiral. Message ready to send, sir. But I should warn you, if these humans are really as dangerous as the old reports say, we might be trading one threat for another. Kethavar nodded. Send it anyway. We need to try everything. The message shot out into space, traveling faster than light toward a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. A world that no one in the Coalition had spoken to for over 200 years. A world that their ancestors had been too frightened to visit. In the command center of Harmony's Edge, the last free beings in the galaxy waited for an answer. They did not know if help would come. They did not know if Earth even existed anymore. But for the first time in months, they had hope. Somewhere out there, on a planet so dangerous that it had been marked as forbidden, there might be warriors strong enough to save them all. They waited desperately for the Deathworlders of Earth to appear. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking coffee when the message arrived. She worked at the Deep Space Listening Station in Chile, a place where giant radio dishes pointed at the stars, hoping to hear something interesting. Most days they heard nothing but cosmic noise, but today was different. Sarah, you need to see this, called her partner, Dr. James Park, from across the room. His voice sounded strange. The computer picked up a transmission. It's not from Earth. Sarah put down her coffee and walked over to James's workstation. On the screen, she could see a series of patterns that definitely did not come from any human technology. How long ago did this come in? She asked. About 10 minutes ago. The AI translation program has been working on it. Sarah, I think it's a message asking for help. The translation program finished its work. The message appeared on screen in simple English. Sarah read it once, then read it again. Then she sat down heavily in a chair. This can't be real, she whispered. The message was from something called the Coalition of Peaceful Worlds. It talked about a galaxy full of different alien species. It described a terrible enemy called the Void Swarm that was destroying everything, and at the end it asked Earth to send warriors to help fight them. James, call the president, Sarah said. Call everyone. This changes everything. Within 6 hours, every important person on Earth knew about the message. The president of the United Earth government sat in a meeting room with generals, scientists, and diplomats. They had read the alien message dozens of times. So let me understand this, said General Martinez, head of Earth's military forces. These aliens are asking us for help because they think we're good at fighting wars? That appears to be correct, said Dr. Chen, who had been brought to the meeting as an expert. According to their message, they found Earth 200 years ago, but decided we were too dangerous to contact. Too dangerous? Asked President Williams. What did they see that scared them so much? Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Earth's top historian, spoke up. 200 years ago would have been during the resource wars. We were fighting over oil, water, and food. It was a very violent time in human history. And they think that makes us qualified to fight this void swarm? Asked Admiral Rodriguez, head of the Earth Space Navy. Look at their description of their weapons, said General Martinez, pointing to a part of the message. Everything they use is based on energy. Lasers, plasma, ion beams. They've never fought anyone who used simple kinetic weapons. Kinetic weapons? Asked the president. Bullets, missiles, railguns, explained the general. Things that work by hitting the target really hard instead of burning it with energy. Dr. Chen pulled up more information on her tablet. There's something else interesting here. They describe their enemy as adaptive. The Void Swarm can change to resist energy weapons after being hit a few times. But you can't adapt to a chunk of metal moving at high speed. So they want us to shoot the aliens with bullets? President Williams asked. It's more complicated than that, said Admiral Rodriguez. But yes, essentially. Our whole military doctrine is based on kinetic weapons and physical tactics. We've been perfecting warfare for thousands of years. These aliens have been peaceful for so long that they've forgotten how to fight effectively. The room was quiet for a moment. Everyone was thinking about what this meant. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and somehow they were the scary ones. There's another issue, said Dr. Warren. According to this message, these aliens are herbivores or energy-based life forms. They've never had to hunt for food or fight for survival. We're descended from persistence hunters. Our ancestors chased prey across continents until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. What does that mean for us? Asked the president. It means we think differently about conflict, explained General Martinez. To them, war is something terrible that should be avoided. To us, war is a tool that can be used to solve problems. We're not afraid of violence because we've been living with it our whole evolutionary history. Admiral Rodriguez stood up and walked to a wall screen that showed Earth from space. I've been reading the tactical information they sent us. This Void Swarm attacks in straight lines. They use overwhelming numbers and expect their enemies to panic. They've never faced an enemy that uses guerrilla tactics or strategic retreats. You think we can actually win? Asked President Williams. I think we can give them one hell of a fight, Rodriguez replied. The question is whether we should. What do you mean? Asked Dr. Chen. Think about it. Right now, we're a small species on one world. If we help these aliens, we become part of a galactic community, but we also become the military arm of that community. Are we ready for that responsibility? The president looked around the room at all the experts. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats, all of them were thinking about the same thing. This was the biggest decision in human history. How long do we have to decide? She asked. According to their message, the Void Swarm will reach their core worlds in about 6 months, said Dr. Chen. But it would take us at least 2 months to get there with our fastest ships. So we need to decide now, President Williams said. General Martinez leaned forward. Madam President, I need to say something. Our military has been preparing for space warfare for 50 years. We have ships, weapons, and trained soldiers, but we've never had a real enemy to fight. Our people are getting restless. They joined the military to protect Earth, but there's been nothing to protect against. You're saying our soldiers want to fight? Asked the president. I'm saying our soldiers want to serve a purpose, and this might be the most important purpose in human history. Admiral Rodriguez nodded. Plus, if we don't help them and this Void Swarm wins, they might come for us next. Better to fight them far away from Earth. Dr. Chen raised her hand. There's something else we should consider. These aliens have technology we can't imagine. Faster than light travel, energy manipulation, artificial gravity. If we help them, they might share some of that knowledge with us. And if we don't help them, asked the president, then we stay alone on our one world while a galaxy-eating monster grows stronger, said Dr. Warren. Eventually, it will find us. President Williams was quiet for a long time. She thought about humanity's history of war and violence. She thought about the aliens who were so peaceful they couldn't defend themselves. She thought about her children and what kind of universe she wanted to leave for them. Dr. Chen, prepare a response message, she said finally. Tell them we're coming. What should the message say? Asked Dr. Chen. The president smiled, and for a moment she looked like one of humanity's ancient warriors. Tell them that Earth remembers how to fight. Tell them we're bringing everything we have. And tell them that when humans make a promise, we keep it. As the message was prepared and sent toward the stars, Earth began to change. Factories that had been building exploration ships started making warships instead. Soldiers who had been training for theoretical battles started preparing for real ones. Scientists who had been studying peaceful uses of technology started thinking about weapons. For the first time in decades, humanity had a war to fight, and despite the danger, Despite the unknown enemy waiting in the dark between stars, people everywhere felt something they had not felt in a long time. They felt needed. The Deathworlders of Earth were going to war. The first human fleet arrived at the Coalition staging area near Vega Prime, exactly 63 days after receiving the distress call. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Earthship Indomitable, watching the alien vessels through the view screen. The Coalition ships were beautiful. They had smooth, curved hulls that glowed with soft light. They moved through space like dancers, silent and graceful. Everything about them spoke of a civilization that had learned to live in harmony with the universe. The human ships looked like weapons, where the alien vessels were smooth. The human ships had sharp angles and armor plating, where the aliens used energy shields that sparkled like soap bubbles. The humans had thick metal hulls designed to absorb damage. The human ships moved like predators, quick and aggressive. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Coalition flagship," reported Communications Officer Torres. "They want to establish first contact protocols." "Put them through," Vasquez replied. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of an alien ship. Standing in the center was a tall, thin being with blue skin and large, gentle eyes. This was Admiral Kethvar, leader of the Coalition forces. "Greetings, beings of Earth," Kethvar said. His voice was translated by the ship's computer, but Vasquez could hear the relief in his tone. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Coalition. We are grateful that you answered our call for help." "I'm Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Earth Space Navy," she replied. "We came as soon as we could. What's the current situation?" "The Void Swarm has consumed the Arcturus system. They are moving toward our core worlds. We estimate they will reach Vega Prime in approximately 4 standard days." Vasquez studied the tactical display her crew had prepared. "How many enemy ships are we looking at?" "Our scouts report approximately 50,000 void creatures approaching," Kethvar said. "Each one is the size of a Coalition battleship." The human admiral nodded calmly. Her crew had expected this. The aliens had sent detailed information about the swarm's size and capabilities. "How many ships do you have available?" Vasquez asked. "The combined Coalition fleet here numbers 8,000 ships," Kethvar replied. "I know it is not many compared to the enemy, but they are all we have left." "And how many battles have you won against the swarm using these ships?" Kethvar's expression became sad. "None, Admiral Vasquez. We have not won a single battle." Vasquez looked at her tactical officer, Commander Sarah Kim. Kim shook her head slightly, indicating that the Coalition's battle plans were as ineffective as they had predicted. "Admiral Kethvar, I'm going to need your fleet to follow new orders," Vasquez said. "Human orders, of course. What do you need us to do?" "For now, stay back and watch. Let my people show you how Earth fights wars." On the Coalition bridge, several alien officers looked shocked. Commander Velnix, the water being, spoke up. "Admiral Vasquez, you only have 1,200 ships. How can you fight 50,000 enemies alone?" Vasquez smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the aliens feel cold despite their environmental suits. "Because you've been fighting them the wrong way." The transmission ended and Vasquez turned to her crew. These were humans who had trained their entire lives for space combat. They came from families of soldiers, sailors, and Marines. They had studied every war in human history and learned from all of them. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez," she announced over the fleet communication system. "You know the plan. Remember, these enemies have never faced kinetic weapons. They've never fought anyone who uses boarding tactics. They've never seen human Marines in action. Let's show them what they've been missing." Across the human fleet, soldiers and sailors prepared for battle. In the weapons bays, technicians loaded railgun cannons with depleted uranium slugs. In the Marine quarters, assault troops checked their armor and weapons. In the fighter bays, pilots climbed into small, fast ships designed for close combat. The human fleet spread out into hunting formations. Where the Coalition ships stayed together in large groups, the human vessels scattered across space like a pack of wolves. "Enemy contact in 1 hour," reported the sensor operator. "Void swarm formation is exactly as predicted. They're coming straight at us in a dense cluster." Vasquez watched the enemy approach on her tactical display. The void creatures moved like a black cloud, overwhelming and terrible. She could understand why the Coalition had been afraid of them. But she had grown up on stories of human battles. She knew how David had defeated Goliath. She knew how small, smart forces could defeat large, dumb ones. Most importantly, she knew that humans had been fighting impossible odds for thousands of years. All ships commence attack pattern Alpha, she ordered. The human fleet struck like lightning. Instead of meeting the swarm head-on, they attacked from the sides and rear. Railgun shots moving at tremendous speed punched through swarm creatures that had never faced solid projectiles before. The aliens' adaptive shielding, designed to absorb energy, was useless against chunks of metal traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Direct hits on target Cluster 7, reported the weapons officer. Enemy ships are breaking apart. For the first time in years, coalition forces watched swarm creatures die, but the real shock came when the swarm tried to board human ships. The aliens had expected panic and surrender, as they had seen from every other species. Instead, they found human Marines waiting for them. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the corridors of the Indomitable as swarm boarding pods attached to the hull. The creatures that emerged were like giant insects made of black crystal, with sharp claws and acid for blood. "Remember your training," Santos told her Marines. "They're big and scary, but they die when you shoot them enough times." The first swarm creature that rounded the corner was 7 feet tall and moved like a spider. It had been designed by evolution to be the perfect killer, but it had never fought humans before. Santos and her Marines opened fire with kinetic weapons, guns that fired solid bullets instead of energy beams. The creature's armor, designed to absorb laser fire, shattered under the impact of high-velocity rounds. "Target down," Santos reported calmly, moving to the next section. Throughout the battle, the Coalition fleet watched in amazement as the humans did things that seemed impossible. Human fighters engaged swarm creatures in close combat, using tactics that relied on speed and aggression instead of overwhelming firepower. Human Marines fought hand-to-hand battles in zero gravity, using knives and clubs when their guns ran out of ammunition. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to enjoy it. "Admiral Kethvar," said Commander Velnix, "the humans are laughing during combat." "Why are they laughing?" Kethvar watched the battle displays and realized something that chilled him to his core. "They are not fighting for survival, Commander. They are fighting because they are good at it." Captain Marcus Rodriguez, commanding the human ship Defiant, reported to Admiral Vasquez after destroying his third swarm creature. "Ma'am, I have to say this is the most fun I've had since the Academy War Games." "Understood, Captain," Vasquez replied. "Try to contain your enthusiasm until after we've won." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Void Swarm formation that had destroyed dozens of Coalition fleets was scattered across space. Thousands of swarm creatures had been destroyed, and the rest were retreating toward the galactic rim. The Coalition fleet had lost exactly 0 ships. "Admiral Kethvar," Vasquez said over the communication link, "I think we need to have a longer conversation about how this war is going to work." On the Coalition flagship, alien officers from dozens of species stared at their displays. They had just watched a force 1/40th their enemy's size win a complete victory. They had seen creatures they thought were unstoppable die like any other living thing. But most disturbing of all, they had seen their saviors fight with a joy and efficiency that reminded them why Earth had been marked as a Class X death world. The Deathworlders of Earth had arrived, and they were everything the galaxy had feared they would be. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time in 3 years, Coalition worlds received reports of a major battle won instead of lost. The impossible had happened. Someone had defeated the Void Swarm. Dr. Jennifer Walsh stepped off the transport ship at Harmony Station, the Coalition's military headquarters. She was Earth's chief xenobiologist, sent to work with alien scientists to learn more about the enemy. What she found shocked her more than the aliens themselves. "You've been studying them wrong," she told the Coalition science team during their first meeting. The room was filled with beings from a dozen different species, all brilliant researchers who had spent years trying to understand the swarm. Dr. Lisa Thera, the crystal being who served as head scientist, glowed dimly with confusion. "What do you mean, Dr. Walsh?" Jennifer pulled up holographic displays showing swarm creatures. "You've been trying to communicate with them. You've been looking for ways to coexist peacefully, but look at their biology." She pointed to various parts of the creature's anatomy. "Everything about them is designed for consumption and reproduction. They don't have social structures. They don't build art or culture. They exist only to eat and multiply." "But surely all life has value," said Dr. Morden, a plant-like being whose species had never known conflict. There must be a way to find peace. Jennifer looked at him with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to a child. Doctor, on Earth we learned that sometimes peace isn't possible. Sometimes you have predators that can only be stopped by becoming better predators. The alien scientists were disturbed by this concept. Their species had evolved past predator-prey relationships millions of years ago. The idea of studying something in order to kill it more efficiently was foreign to them. On Earth, Jennifer continued, we have creatures called sharks. They have existed for 400 million years. They're perfect killing machines, but we learned how to hunt them when we needed to. We studied their weaknesses not to help them, but to protect ourselves from them. She pulled up new data from the recent battle. The swarm creatures have 3 major weaknesses. First, they can't adapt to kinetic weapons because they've never encountered them. Second, they rely on hive mind communication that can be disrupted. Third, they're designed for space combat, not ground fighting. Dr. Velsha, a graceful being that looked like living light, asked, how does this help us? It means we can teach your people to fight them effectively, Jennifer replied. But you'll have to learn to think like humans. Meanwhile, human military advisors began working with coalition forces throughout the galaxy. The cultural clash was immediate and dramatic. Colonel Jack Thompson stood in front of a group of Zephyrian officers on their homeworld. The Zephyrians were tall, elegant beings with telepathic abilities. They had volunteered to learn human military tactics. The first thing you need to understand, Thompson told them, is that in war, the goal is to break things and hurt people. Everything else is secondary. Commander Elthar, a Zephyrian with silver skin and large eyes, looked disturbed. Colonel Thompson, our species has not engaged in violence for over 10,000 years. How can we learn to hurt others? Because if you don't, they'll hurt you worse, Thompson replied bluntly. The swarm doesn't care about your peaceful nature. They see you as food. The training was difficult for both sides. The aliens had to learn concepts that went against millions of years of peaceful evolution. The humans had to learn to work with beings who found violence physically painful to contemplate. But slowly, it began to work. Captain Lisa Park led the first joint human-alien strike team in a raid on a swarm scout ship. Her team included 3 human marines and 2 Zephyrian telepaths. Remember, she told Commander Veltar as they approached the enemy vessel, use your telepathy to coordinate our movements, not to try to understand the swarm. They're not capable of rational thought. The raid was a complete success. The Zephyrians used their mental abilities to give the human marines perfect situational awareness, while the humans provided the tactical knowledge and firepower needed to destroy the target. It worked, Veltar said in amazement after the battle. We fought as one mind with multiple bodies. That's the idea, Park replied. Humans learn teamwork from hunting in packs. Now you're part of our pack. Similar training programs began throughout Coalition space. The peaceful Tidecallers learned amphibious assault tactics. The rock-like granite folk discovered the advantages of demolitions and siege warfare. The energy-based Luminari found they could disrupt swarm communications in ways humans couldn't. But not everyone was comfortable with the changes. Admiral Kethvar met privately with Admiral Vasquez on Harmony Station. They sat in Kethvar's office, which was decorated with art from dozens of peaceful worlds. Admiral Vasquez, I must speak honestly with you, Kethvar said. Your people frighten my officers. In what way? Vasquez asked. Yesterday I watched one of your Marines demonstrate combat techniques to my security team. He broke a training dummy in half with his bare hands, then smiled and asked if anyone wanted to try it themselves. Vasquez nodded. That would be Sergeant Rodriguez. He's actually one of our gentler instructors. Gentler? Kethavar's voice rose slightly. Admiral, he spoke of killing enemy soldiers as if it were a sport. For him, it kind of is, Vasquez admitted. Humans have always turned war into a competition. It's how we stay motivated during the worst parts of combat. Kethvar was quiet for a moment. I am grateful for your help. Truly grateful. But I wonder what will happen to the galaxy when this war is over. Will your people be content to return to their homeworld? Vasquez considered the question carefully. Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We're good at it because we've had lots of practice. But we've also learned something important. The best way to end a war is to win it completely. What does that mean? It means we're not just going to drive the swarm away. We're going to eliminate them entirely, and then we're going to make sure nothing like them can threaten the galaxy again. This conversation was happening on worlds throughout Coalition space. Peaceful species were learning to fight, but they were also learning to fear their teachers. On the water world of Aquatica, human marines taught Tidecaller warriors how to use underwater explosives. The Tidecallers were amazed by the effectiveness of the techniques, but disturbed by the human instructor's enthusiasm for destruction. Sergeant Williams actually enjoys blowing things up, reported Captain Tidalwave to his superiors. He speaks of it as if it were a form of art. On the crystal caves of Luminos, human engineers worked with granite folk to develop new mining techniques that could be used to destroy swarm hive structures. The results were effective beyond all expectations. The humans think of ways to break things that never occurred to us, said Master Crafter Stoneheart. It is as if destruction comes naturally to them. As the war continued, more Coalition species began to see results. Combined human-alien forces won battle after battle. The swarm, which had seemed unstoppable, began to retreat from core Coalition worlds. But with each victory, the galaxy changed a little more. Species that had been peaceful for millennia began to develop military traditions. Young aliens who had never known conflict volunteered to learn human fighting techniques. Weapons manufacturing, almost unknown in Coalition space, became a major industry. Dr. Walsh met with her alien colleagues after 6 months of joint research. The difference in the Coalition scientists was dramatic. Where once they had spoken only of peace and understanding, now they discussed tactical advantages and enemy weaknesses. Dr. Walsh, said Dr. Lysathera, I have been thinking about your earlier comments regarding predator-prey relationships. What about them? I believe I understand now why your species was placed under quarantine. You do not just fight when necessary. You think like predators all the time? Jennifer nodded. It served us well. We're still alive and we're winning this war. Yes, Lysathera agreed. But I wonder, when this war is over, will you be able to stop thinking like predators? It was a question that many beings throughout the galaxy were beginning to ask. The Deathworlders of Earth had saved them all. But in doing so, they had changed the very nature of galactic civilization. The galaxy was learning to fight, and there would be no going back. The final battle began at the edge of the galaxy, in a region of space where no stars shone. This was where the Void Swarm had built their primary hive cluster, a massive structure the size of a small moon, made from the consumed remains of 1,000 destroyed worlds. Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the tactical display. Around the hive cluster, millions of swarm creatures moved in complex patterns. It was the largest concentration of enemy forces anyone had ever seen. Fleet status. Report, she ordered. All. Human ships ready for combat, reported Commander. Kim. Coalition forces are in position at coordinates 7 through 15. The combined fleet was impressive. 200 human warships worked alongside 5,000 Coalition vessels. But more importantly, the Coalition ships now carried human weapons and were crewed by aliens who had learned to think like warriors. Admiral Kethvar, are your people ready? Vasquez asked over the communication link. As ready as we can be, came the reply from the Coalition flagship. My officers have learned much from your instructors. But Admiral, the size of the enemy force... I know, Vasquez said. That's why we're not going to fight them all at once. The battle plan was typically human. Instead of a direct assault, they would use the swarm's size against them. Human intelligence had discovered that the hive cluster had a central core that controlled all the swarm creatures. If they could destroy that core, the entire swarm would collapse. But reaching the core meant flying through millions of enemy ships. All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez, she announced to the entire fleet. Today we end this war, not by driving the enemy away, but by destroying them completely. Some of us won't make it home. But our sacrifice will ensure that no peaceful world ever has to face this threat again. The attack began with a diversionary assault on the outer edges of the swarm formation. Coalition ships, now armed with human kinetic weapons, drew the attention of the majority of enemy forces. The swarm creatures, following their instincts, moved to overwhelm the attackers. This left a narrow corridor open to the hive cluster's core. Strike Force Alpha, this is your window, Vasquez ordered. All human ships follow me in. 50 of Earth's fastest ships, led by the Indomitable, dove straight into the heart of the enemy formation. They moved like fighter planes in an old Earth war. dodging between massive swarm creatures and firing at anything that got in their way. Behind them, the coalition forces fought the battle of their lives. Zephyrian telepaths coordinated massive fleet movements with inhuman precision. Granite folk engineers detonated carefully placed explosives that broke apart swarm formations. Tidecaller warriors used their knowledge of fluid dynamics to predict enemy movement patterns. But the cost was enormous. For every swarm creature destroyed, the coalition lost ships and lives. "Admiral, we're losing the Serenity," reported Commander Velnix from the coalition flagship. "Tidecaller Captain Depthsong is requesting permission to ram the enemy battleship." "Permission granted," Admiral Kethvar replied, though the words hurt him to say. "May the deep currents carry him to peace." The coalition had learned to fight, but they had also learned to sacrifice. Meanwhile, the human strike force pushed deeper into the hive cluster. The structure was massive and alien, made from organic materials that pulsed with dark energy. Corridors large enough for starships wound through its interior like the veins of some cosmic creature. "Target confirmed," announced the sensor operator. "Central core is directly ahead, 2,000 meters." But between them and the core, a final group of swarm creatures waited. These were different from the others, larger, more intelligent, and clearly designed to protect the hive's most important systems. "All ships, emergency power to weapons," Vasquez ordered. "We're going to have to punch through them." The final assault was brutal. Human ships fired everything they had, tearing through swarm defenders with railgun rounds and nuclear torpedoes. Some of the human vessels were destroyed in the fighting, their crews dying with the knowledge that they had given everything for victory. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the Defiant, managed to get his ship close enough to the core to deploy a boarding party. "This is it, people," he told his Marines. "We plant the antimatter charges and get out." Simple as that, but it wasn't simple. The interior of the hive core was filled with swarm creatures unlike any they had faced before. These were the original creatures, the first of their kind, and they fought with a desperation that surprised even the humans. Sergeant Santos led her squad through corridors that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. The walls were covered with organic growths that moved and writhed. The air was filled with strange sounds that hurt to hear. "Stay focused," she told her Marines. "It's just another bug hunt." They planted the charges in the heart of the hive core, a chamber filled with pulsing organic machinery that controlled the entire swarm. As they worked, more creatures attacked. But the Marines held them off with the same efficiency they had shown throughout the war. "Charges set," Santos reported. "We need to get out of here." But as they tried to retreat, the hive began to collapse around them. The swarm's final defense was to bring down the entire structure, hoping to trap the human forces inside. "All ships, emergency evacuation," Admiral Vasquez ordered. "The whole thing's coming down." Most of the human strike force managed to escape before the antimatter charges detonated. The explosion tore through the hive core like lightning, destroying the central intelligence that had controlled the swarm for countless ages. Across the galaxy, every swarm creature simply stopped moving. Without their hive mind to guide them, they became nothing more than mindless drones that drifted through space until their life support systems failed. The war was over. In the aftermath, the galaxy had to face a new reality. The coalition of peaceful worlds still existed, but it was no longer truly peaceful. Every species had learned to fight. Every world had weapons and soldiers. Dr. Jennifer Walsh stood in the observation lounge of Harmony Station, looking out at the stars. She had spent the last year studying the swarm, learning everything she could about their biology and behavior. Now that knowledge seemed almost useless. "Dr. Walsh?" came a voice behind her. She turned to see Dr. Lysithera approaching. The crystal being's light was dimmer than usual, a sign of deep thought. "Hello, Lysithera. How are you adjusting to the peace?" "That is what I wanted to discuss with you," the alien scientist replied. "Is it truly peace? My people have built weapons factories. Our young learn military tactics in school. We have become something different from what we were." Jennifer nodded. "Change is hard, but sometimes it's necessary for survival. Will it ever end? Will we ever return to the way things were before?" Jennifer considered the question carefully. "On Earth, we have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war." The galaxy learned that lesson the hard way. But what happens now? Your people are the strongest military force in the galaxy. What will humans do with that power? Before Jennifer could answer, Admiral Vasquez entered the lounge. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had completed a difficult but necessary job. "The Council is ready for your report, Admiral," Lisa Thera said. "What report?" Jennifer asked. "The Galactic Council is meeting to decide Earth's role in the post-war galaxy," Vasquez explained. "They're offering us full membership in the Coalition with one condition." "What condition?" "We become the galaxy's permanent military force. Anytime there's a threat that peaceful methods can't handle, they call us." Jennifer thought about this. "And what did you tell them?" Vasquez smiled. "I told them we'd be honored to serve. But I also told them something else." "What?" "That we'll do the job our way. We'll protect the peaceful worlds, but we won't become their police force. We'll fight when fighting is necessary, but we won't start wars just because someone asks us to." Dr. Lysathera's glow brightened slightly. "You are saying that humans will use their strength responsibly?" "I'm saying that humans have learned something from thousands of years of warfare," Vasquez replied. "The best warriors are the ones who know when not to fight." In the months that followed, Earth established military bases throughout Coalition space. Human instructors continued to train alien forces, but they also taught them human concepts of honor, restraint, and protecting the innocent. The galaxy had changed forever. The age of pure peace was over, but something new had begun. An age where peace was protected by those strong enough to defend it. Admiral Kethvar, now working closely with human forces, often thought about the irony of their situation. They had called for help from the most dangerous species they knew, and those dangerous beings had not only saved them but had taught them to save themselves. "The Deathworlders of Earth appeared when we needed them most," he told his staff during one of their regular briefings. "Now they stand guard at the borders of our civilization, ensuring that we never again have to wait desperately for someone to save us." And in the deep archives of the Coalition, the entry for Earth was changed one final time. No longer did it read Class X Deathworld Quarantined. Instead, it simply said Earth, home of humanity, Guardians of the Galaxy. The galaxy had learned that sometimes you need monsters to fight monsters. The question was no longer whether their guardians were dangerous.